Hello and welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah. Happy to be back with you after a very rare week with no interview. That, like I said, is very rare. It doesn't happen very often. So it was a little bit strange last week to neither do an interview nor post an episode. So I'm happy to be back with you this week, bringing you another author interview. As we get started, I do want to remind you, as I always do, to please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you are either listening to or watching this episode on. That really does help the algorithm, gets the podcast out to more readers such as yourselves. If you want to help the podcast in another way and the network as a whole, you can do so by going to gsmcpodcast.net. There you can leave a tip or a donation. If while you're there you want to leave a question or a comment also, that would be great. I'm happy to engage with those, answer them as soon as I receive them, the next episode after I receive them. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Your support, whatever form that support takes, is always greatly appreciated, whether you've been with me from the beginning, whether you are just joining the podcast now, maybe you've just discovered it. Regardless, every bit of support helps, and I am grateful for all of it, past, present, future. Thank you so much. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. So how has your week been going? I guess how has your July been going, since it's already July 1st and it just now started? I don't know if this is showing in the recording, but there's something reflecting on this screen that is making my eyes look science fiction blue. I feel like I'm an android or something. I need to turn my head a different angle. That was random. But how is your July going? I can't believe we are halfway through 2025 already, that the 4th of July is coming up this weekend. Hopefully you have something fun planned. Please be safe, whatever you're doing. If you have a 3-day weekend, that will be great. But I always think of my family on the 4th of July and their family reunion on Flathead Lake in Montana. I used to go every year as a kid. Every year I miss it. I wish I was there. It is the place that my heart and my brain are on the 4th of July, no matter where in the world I happen to be. So thinking of them this weekend as they celebrate and eat way too much food and swim in the lake, which is always freezing, no matter how warm it is. It's supposed to be hopefully pretty nice this year, but the lake is always freezing. It's still fun. You're not old if you can swim in Flathead Lake on the 4th of July. That's what we say in my family. I haven't been in a few years, but the last time I was able to swim, so I wasn't old then. I might be old now, I'm not sure. At any rate, we have another author interview this week, a new author, someone that I haven't read or spoke to before. I am speaking this week with author Brandi Bradley about her book, Pretty Girls Get Away with Murder. Let me give you the description. When a young entrepreneur is killed, everyone in town points fingers at his new age, neo-hippie, miracle-manifesting smoke show of an ex-girlfriend, Gabbi, including the victim's best friend, Jenna. As Detective Lindy D'Arnaud and her partner, Boggs, search for a motive, they begin to wonder if this go-getter was chasing after more than he could handle. In Lindy's personal life, things aren't much clearer. When Lindy's wife's ex-boyfriend and sperm donor to their baby decides to move back to town, she finds herself competing for her wife's affection. A Southern noir perfect for fans of NBC's Dateline, Pretty Girls Get Away with Murder is a page-turner that will keep readers on the edge of their seat. So again, that is the description of the book. As I said at the end of the last episode, we are back into thriller territory. Thriller, yes, but definitely crime fiction, as you heard. Lindy is one of the points of view, the main character in terms of being the protagonist, the detective who is investigating the murder of Ethan. We also get the points of view of Jenna and Gabbi. Gabbi is the ex-girlfriend. I love that it said smoke show of an ex-girlfriend. And Jenna is the best friend. There are lots of issues of identity in this book. So identity in terms of that perception of Gabbi. She's described as a smoke show, but she's also, what else did they describe? Neo-hippie, miracle making. She's got a lot of those influencer ideals. She's trying to start a business, have that Instagram personality and lifestyle, etc. So there's a lot of stereotypes around her and her character. So it's actually really good that we get her point of view, because we get maybe a little bit different insight into her character than just what other people say about her as Lindy investigates this murder. And then Jenna is the best friend, and she's starting to learn more about Ethan as the investigation continues, and she realizes that maybe she didn't know him or some of the other people in her life as well as she thought. And that is some of the ways she looks at her own identity, some of the ways other people see her. So, like I said, identity has a really big role in this book, as does the setting, which is rural Kentucky and small town, small community mentality. If you've ever grown up in that small town situation, then you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. It can be very hard to figure out your place in that society and culture. Lindy is dealing with that. She married into the small town, but she is not only an outsider, even though she did marry in, but she is a police detective. She is a lesbian, and there's a lot of things on her in terms of identity and acceptance and cultural standards and norms. So let's go ahead and turn to the conversation with Brandi. Again, the book is called Pretty Girls Get Away with Murder. The author is Brandi Bradley. Hi, Brandi. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk about your book, Pretty Girls Get Away with Murder. But before we do that, if you would take just a few minutes to share a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So I'm an indie mystery writer that lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and I focus primarily on Southern noir, small town crime, and it tries to be very victim focused.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, this is random, but I just have to say that I have a weird thing with like letters and words, and I love that you have an I and an EY in your name, that you're Brandy with an I, but Bradley with an EY. Why that
Yes.
makes me happy, I don't know, but it does.
Well, it's my married name, and I used to joke that the only reason that I married him was because I wanted to be a B in the alphabet because I wanted to be called on first
Nice.
whenever I was in alphabetical order because I grew up as a W. But then after I started writing and people were asking us like, "Oh, and who are you?" and doing those networking things, I would say Brandi Bradley, and I also became kind of obsessed with the lyrical aspect of it. It's just like it just sounds good. I just love
Yes.
the alliteration and everything.
Yeah.
So, but I do have to spell it for everyone all the time.
Right, because there's multiple ways to spell Brandy. So
Yes, yes.
yes.
So there's a lot of like, is it an IE? Is it a Y?
Is it
Is it
EY?
Bradley? Is it LY? Is it LEY? And so it's just I'm also brandybradley.com for my website. So I have to BRAD, BRANDI, BRADLEY.
Yes.
Sometimes I will screw up and my signature will be Brandy or Bradley Bradley. And I'm like,
Love it.
what? I need more B12. What's happening?
Yes. Your coffee probably rarely has your name spelled right.
Oh, it's not right. It's yeah.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about the book. Can you give an overview of Pretty Girls Get Away with Murder?
So with Pretty, it is a small town mystery. It Southern New Orleans. Incoming entrepreneur is murdered in his shower, and our investigator, Detective Lindy D'Arnaud, is called onto the scene. And as her and her partner Ian Boggs start looking into this young gentleman, his friends and family and many people on Facebook are pointing their fingers at his ex-girlfriend, who is an aspiring fitness guru. She's very invested in Instagram culture.
Yeah.
And as they start to speak with her and speak with other people involved, it seems that this thing that everyone keeps trying to point at seems like it's deflecting from what might actually be going on as far as like small town politics and what it means to be an entrepreneur and your public face versus your private face. So it gets a little uncovering of everyone's secrets as it goes on, which is always fun.
Yes. And one thing I thought was really interesting, often in books like this, and of course, we're not going to talk about the end and all that stuff, but often in books like this, it feels like they wrap things up in about a week, maybe more, maybe a month at the outside. That is not the case here. So you want to talk about the timeline a little more?
Well, see, and that was also something that I often think is like, wow, that Law and Order episode just knocked it out, what, a couple of days?
Yeah.
They only have one case that they focus on. They don't have other things going on. No other crime happens in New York other than that one case that
Right.
Lenny Briscoe is working on. And so, as so many of us are becoming more educated in the true crime sphere, we're starting to realize that these things do not happen quickly. They don't happen in a week. Sometimes it does take months and it takes manpower and overtime and also just the exhaustion of investigating a case. So when I started working on this, I was like, okay, you have to be realistic in a sense of like, it's not going to get wrapped up in a week. It's not an easy answer. It's going to take time. And what that allowed me to do is allow grieving time for the people who lost this guy who was very important to him, the victim. I tried to make sure that the victim wasn't completely lost in that sense of like, again, I'm going to talk about Law and Order a lot because we've been watching it while we travel, and it does sometimes seem like in both true crime and in the mystery crime space where the victim just kind of becomes the body.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I wanted this to be someone who was loved, but also not sanctified. I guess that's a horrible
Mhm.
word, but I mean, like, I didn't want it to be that sense of like, they were perfect,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, no, people are complicated. And so I hope that I was able to explore that complication.
Yeah. Although in some ways that's very natural with grief. My aunt always jokes, I hate it when I go to a funeral and they only say nice things. She says, when I die, you tell everybody I was a bee. Like,
I know. And that is
not,
what's
but
Yeah, and that is kind of the thing about grief is that it's almost part of the stages of grief is that wanting to turn them into saints
yeah.
and wanting to only remember the good times and the good things. And then as you develop some perspective and that kind of changes. But from a fiction writer's perspective, like you want a little bit of that, but you also don't want it to be, like um you don't want to take it too far. I guess it's really achieving that balance
Right.
of, reality, but also it is fiction. You have to
Yeah.
write it in a way where you like everybody or everybody, like there's something that draws you to them.
Yeah. Brandi is exactly right with what she was just talking about in terms of characters and readers, at least me as a reader. I very much need to be able to resonate with something with a reader, especially main character or protagonist. If there's nothing that I can resonate with about or empathize with or anything, if I can't find that connection, I really don't like that character. It's very difficult for me to yeah, find something that I can sympathize, empathize, resonate with. I don't want to read the book if I can't do that. So she's exactly right in what she was just saying, which of course makes sense since she is the author and wrote the characters and also needs to find something that she likes or appreciates about them, etc. When we come back, we'll be talking about that dual triple point of view. Initially, it's a dual point of view, and then there's some dual timeline as well. We're going backwards as we learn more about Gabbi and how that helps, as I was saying earlier, to kind of understand Gabbi, get to know her in a little different way than just from hearing people talk about her as Lindy investigates. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Brandi Bradley. As we get into this second segment, your second and final reminder to please go to gsmcpodcast.net if you would like to support the podcast in a monetary fashion. Again, that's not only this podcast, but the network as a whole. You'll see that scrolling along the bottom there throughout. It's also playing next to me, but it does scroll along the bottom throughout this episode in case you need a reminder of gsmcpodcast.net. As I already said, and will say again many, many more times as you continue to listen to this podcast, thank you for all of the support you have given, no matter what form that support might take. Let's go ahead and go back to the interview. Before the break, Lindy was talking about Ethan, who is the victim, but talking about Ethan as also a character, getting to know him as a person as the investigation happens, and how we as readers need to resonate with characters even when they're, in this case, the victim of the crime. Trying not to make him all one thing or another. And so he's maybe a little more human. People might resonate with him in one way or another. So let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Brandi. But that, I think that's where the timeline comes into play again, because you can get past that initial, oh, we're only remembering the good things, and then starting to remember the whole person.
Right.
Yeah, it's that grief movie, the stages of grief. I think you're right.
Yeah.
And again, not giving away the ending, but let's talk about the title, Pretty Girls Get Away with Murder. Just unpack that a little bit.
I mean, yes, I will. I'll unpack that. So back when I started working on this, or the first germination of the idea was back, I think, in 2016, and or maybe a little before that. And so thinking about, like, we had this like time frame that we both acknowledged and kind of poked at this idea of the crazy ex-girlfriend,
Mm.
or crazy women, or violent women, or dangerous women. I guess that might be the best way to phrase it, just the concept of dangerous women. And I have a variety of people, and we talk a lot about body positivity, and we talk about inclusion, but at the same time, there seems to be like a little veil of, as long as you're not too pretty, like we embrace you and we include you, unless you're gorgeous, or unless you're striving to be some type of like idealized sense of like American beauty, so, or Western beauty. So I kind of wanted to poke fun of it a little way, where we almost villainize dangerous women, and being attractive is a sense of being dangerous. So that's why I wanted it to be kind of like looking at this idea of jumping to conclusions about individuals who have a certain amount of privilege because of their aesthetics,
Hmm.
while also wanting to have a title that sounds a little bit like a Dateline episode, or like something that we would have probably watched as a movie of the week,
Hmm.
or a grindhouse film kind of thing, and that noir aspect of it. So I wanted it kind of on both sides.
Hmm. And we get some of that with the different perspectives of women in the three women that we follow, because initially it's two points of view, and then eventually we get Ethan's friend Jenna's point of view as well. So talk about writing from those three very different perspectives.
Yeah, like typically when I write, I don't like to do first person that often, because I think it was my reporter training, because I went to school for journalism. So I really like telling the stories with this broader view. This is what happened kind of thing, as like an observer or a reporter type of thing. And when I was working on this one, I thought, wouldn't it be great to just take on the voice of someone who is not angelic, right? Like someone who can be a little catty and a little vicious and a little judgmental. And I started playing around with this idea of this story, and I'm like, well, what would this very catty and judgmental friend say? Or what would this individual say? And so I really kind of leaned into the fun of taking on like another voice. But when it came to the investigation of the crime, I didn't want that. So that's why my detective is told from the third person point of view, because I needed, if you're going to be an investigator, you need them to be somewhat objective in a sense. So that was a lot of fun to be able to like write with these different voices, but it is a lot to manage.
Hmm.
So I had to do a lot of like different tricks and organization things and documenting and doing foundational stuff so I could keep all of the events and their perceptions and the point of views and everything very separate about like, well, what did this person observe? And what did this person observe? And even played around with okay, they're at the same event. What
Hmm.
is the difference between what they observed and how much of that comes from them judging each other?
Yeah.
And that actually came from Big Little Lies. So I read Leanne Moriarty, I think is the author's name, who wrote Big Little Lies. She did multiple points of view and she would create one setting and tell it from multiple points of view so you could get the idea of like a person of this level of privilege sees it this way, a person of this little level of affluence sees it this way, a person of this connection to the character sees it a different way. So I kind of like that idea because I think about how many of us go into social situations and then afterwards debrief. And you
Hmm.
hear someone say, "Oh, I didn't see that," or "I didn't catch that," or "I didn't notice that," or "When did that happen?" Because we all take on different things when we're in these spaces.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to play around with that. But when it came to like, okay, but there's a crime,
Right.
kind of thing, I was just like, okay, you need third person, you know, camera in the corner kind of
Mhm.
aspect to it.
Yeah. But we also get those different perspectives with it's a small town setting, everyone knows everyone and what they're up to. And then we get these three very different women. So from a character perspective, talk a little bit about writing those very different points of view.
Well, with and I guess it actually comes from the area that I was writing about. So I lived in Kentucky in the western part for 10 years before I got married as a reporter. And part of living in small towns and rural areas is, as a reporter, I got sent to different areas. So if
Mhm.
I was in this one area, I was like, oh, I can kind of shift, in like my language because this is more rural and it's more country and it's agrarian. So it's a little bit more about what is grown here. Where you go to the college town, it's a little bit more about the education level. And then I would go to other areas and I was like, oh, this is where the backwoods bars are, or this is where, the mayor is really in charge, so you kind of like get these different things. So I have these different women who grew up in different areas and are kind of like pulled together to this community that's a college town. So it offered more opportunities, even though it was small. So
Yeah.
I could have this individual with this background where they're, it was more agrarian and country. It's like wealthy, it's like farm families, the individuals who grew up with like older money, but it was rooted in very much the dirt, where then you have this other community that it was not like that. And then you have Lindy, who's the outsider, Detective Lindy D'Arnaud. She grew up on the other side of the state and
Yeah.
fell in love with a girl and moved there and has to learn about this entire new town's politics and how things happen behind the scenes more than they do up front in front of everyone. So she
Mhm.
has a great partner with Boggs who can kind of educate her on this is how it works here and this is
Right.
how it's always worked, and if we're going to like investigate crimes here, we need to understand that. You need to
Yeah.
understand that this is how you talk to the people here and this is what you need to look into, and you got to think about it's not on the surface, everything's behind the scenes, and
Right.
that was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah. And he's
Yeah,
good too because he knows everyone and he knows probably their grandparents and their great
yeah,
grandparents. Yeah, everything that
yeah,
small towns involve generationally.
yeah.
Talk a little bit more about Lindy as the protagonist in the fact that she's the detective. What about her do you think will resonate with readers?
Well, I love Lindy. I feel very drawn to her. I very much in that sense of I wanted someone who really kind of embodied an Elmore Leonard detective spirit, where they are a little cynical and they are a little cold, but they have a little bit of hope, either
Mm,
hope for like things, not always in that sense that things are going to get better, but like we're going to get through it kind of way. And so with Lindy, openly gay woman in Western Kentucky who fell head over heels for a local girl who is bi.
Mhm.
And that creates complications on a lot of different ways. And that is something that she finds herself confronted with, is that, I married this girl, I'm in love with this girl, and she's very rooted in her community who might be looking at this like, oh, it's a phase. And so just wondering how much community pressure is going to change their relationship as they continue to live in this small town,
Mhm.
and being committed to each other, but also knowing that the world is not rooting for them always,
Yeah.
especially in a lot of these small towns. So
No.
I really wanted to show that, as much as I love the incredible adventures of two girls in love, like it makes my heart sing so much. I also know like it's not like in the movies, it's complicated, and it's complicated
Mhm.
on so many different levels. And let's look at it. Let's go with it. Let's explore it a little more.
Yeah. And it's so interesting for Lindy because she is married to someone who is from that town. So April fits in. She belongs. Lindy does not, but she married into it. But then there's also the fact that they're two women who are married. Like there's so many
Yeah.
layers of will they be accepted or not.
And then they are raising a kid together.
I did not grow up in Kentucky, but I did grow up in a very small town and a very rural small town. So I do understand the layers of complexity that are involved in actually fitting into that kind of community. And Lindy certainly has her work cut out for her. We are going to continue talking about this after our next break in terms of Lindy. We've already covered some of those layers, but then also the fact that Lindy and April, her wife, also have a baby together and how that adds to that complexity. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with author Brandi Bradley. Before the break, we were talking about life in a small town or in a very close-knit community and how hard it can be to feel accepted in that kind of community, how the character of Lindy struggles with that acceptance. Let's go ahead and return now to the conversation with Brandi.
And then they are raising a kid together. And
Yeah.
so that also creates other things because, just how's your kid going to be accepted in these communities, and how are people perceiving that, and how big of a family do they want, and how many other people do they have to get involved? One of the things that really got to me was in my research, and also just listening to friends talk about how complicated the journey is for same-sex couples to have kids, and how, straight couples kind of forget that privilege of reproduction is,
Yeah.
and I know that we have so many conversations about IVF, and that is complicated in its own different way. So when you are surrounded by people who are like, we're trying, but we're not trying, or, I just got pregnant and just kind of shrug it off, or like these prejudices that we have toward individuals who are like, I'm a single mom. Like it's so complicated, and we just kind of dismiss it. And when you think about love stories, you can kind of, especially love stories that are about people who want to have families, it does seem like, we have romanticized this idea of people who have it easy.
Mm.
And I wanted to not only get into the physiological challenges, but also the emotional challenges, especially for a woman who's bi, who probably grew up thinking that one day she'll just end up pregnant. And now she has to plan it and schedule it and make it, more involved than she ever thought it was going to be. And
Mhm.
kind of mourning that loss. I wanted to show them going through that.
Yeah. So, in terms of characters, when you start writing, do you have a really good understanding of your characters, or do you prefer them to evolve as you write, or some combination thereof?
I think it's more of a combination, but I'm definitely a plotter as opposed to a pantser. So when I'm currently getting started on something new right now, and so now I'm in the throes of that creation process and creating character sketches and timelines and outlines and mood boards and a variety of different things. So I do like to sit with my characters and think, okay, so like, what are their favorite colors? When is their birthday? What is their zodiac? What would their enneagram be? What are their books on their bookshelf, or do they just not read? How much time do they spend on their phone? What are the things that they get? What are their annoyances? What are the things that are just kind of like annoyances? But then also, what are their virtues that seem like they might be very simple? What are they careful with? What are they careless with? And it does kind of evolve more when you actually start writing the scenes because it's no longer theoretical, you're putting them into action, right? So you have to actually make them engage and do stuff. So it is a little bit of both. I try to get them as prepared as possible, but then when I actually start writing them, I just kind of have to like let them do the work.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Um, Particular research that you did for the book? Anything interesting?
Um, I am one of those people. It was just like, oh, tell me more about your research. I was like, oh, do you mean that? Did I get note cards and go to the library and take notes. I have great writer friends who go and like buy books on like poisons,
Mm.
or they will like get like the encyclopedia of XYZ and they'll read them and they'll be like, oh, I have all this info in my brain. And when I hear about that stuff, I go automatically back to high school. And I'm like, oh, that just sounds horrible. But I also know that I probably watch more documentaries and listen to more documentary style podcasts and investigative journalism things than I don't know anyone. I just feel like they're just constantly in my brain.
Mhm.
So whenever I hear something, and it might be a fact like, did you know this is how you make ricin? And I'm like, I did not. I was unaware that's how you make that poison. Maybe I should write that down somewhere. And so I kind of take it like that way, where it's like, oh, that's an interesting fact that is inspiring something in me. I'll write that down and possibly even Google things. But I think one of the things that is incredibly helpful is reading survivor stories
Mm.
or listening to people talk about their stories, like in a very confessional kind of way, like reading articles or reading like, oh gosh, like this might sound ridiculous, but there is a television series on Showtime called Couples Therapy,
Mm.
and it is about kind of like real life couples sitting and having conversations with a therapist and kind of like working through some of their past traumas and things, and they will tell stories about their experiences. And a lot of times I'm like, oh, that's an interesting experience that you had, and kind of like absorb, like, oh, that's what it's like to be ADHD, or oh, I know so much more about OCD than I did before.
Mhm.
And so all of that goes back to behavior and how people respond to situations. And it comes down to like what makes individuals as individuals, their experiences and their brain wiring and their nature and nurture. And so I try to like absorb a lot of that and be like, like, to think of it in that sense of like, oh, I am taking fictional people. How do I make them more real?
Yeah.
Well, let's give them experiences and backstory and brain wiring that will help them be fully realized on the page.
Yeah. I keep thinking you're like a research dragon. You see something shiny and you grab it and you put it in your hoard and it comes in handy later.
Yes, yes, that's it. That's exactly it. That's what I do. I have a whiteboard in my writer studio, and if something little nugget like pings, I'll go and I'll write it on the whiteboard. I'm like, going, coming back for you later. Or if I'm like, oh, do you remember that Dateline about that guy who did that thing? Let's go find it. Let's go watch it again. Let's go absorb that again and see how I can use that. And when I say use it, it makes me feel like, oh, so nefarious. But it's just part of like the compost, everything goes into the compost and it churns and it churns and it churns, and then it comes out as a new creative product. And I love that.
Do you always remember where you heard something?
Um, Yeah, I do. I'm pretty good about that. I'm like,
That's
oh
amazing.
yeah, it was episode of Dateline, or it was in that book, or it was that podcast, or it was that episode kind of thing. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Thanks. But
It's
also
good
I
about
was a well, also I was a reporter.
it.
So as a reporter, and this is in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. So it wasn't a lot of like, let me take my tape recorder or let me record this or let me take my laptop. It was me and a notebook and a bunch of faces I had to memorize and
Mhm.
names that I had to get spellings.
Yeah.
So it kind of trained me in a lot of ways to be like, oh, that, oh, that, oh, that, and be able to pick out the newsworthy, important. I like that. That's great, kind of things. I think it's just kind of carried over.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Standalone novel, or does Lindy get another case?
Well, what's great is that I have a very short story that I have that I saw on my website, and it's kind of a prequel, like one of her earlier cases, earlier on in her marriage, like getting acclimated to this community. So I did that to kind of help me with her character development. I did that as kind of like a little side piece to help me kind of understand how she works before she got her partner, what some of the past things that she's done. And I'm like, this is great. I'm going to make this available for my newsletter people. And then I made it available on my website to sell as a digital product. And now I've got it in print too. But the next state project that I'm working on is going to be a limited run series. So it's going to be, I think right now it's at three different novels.
Mhm.
And it's going to be a different investigator, but it's all going to be in that same Western Kentucky world. So it's going to be in a nearby community. So there will be overlaps and connections in areas and attitudes and different things. But after I worked with Lindy, I was like, there are lots of things that cops have to do that amateur detectives do not. And there are lots of ways that cops are accountable where amateur detectives are not. And I really do love PI stories,
Mhm.
especially because of the Southern noir aspect of it, or just people who are just motivated to find out like what actually happened here. And because people are less inclined to talk to police officers. So I'm like, well, let's do a amateur private investigator type story and have and also she's renovating a house, this character, and that's just the byproduct of watching way too many episodes of Property Brothers. So I'm excited about that, but I didn't want it to be a standalone. I wanted to be able to tell unveil a larger mystery as the three books go on
Mhm.
in the midst of the shorter one. So that's why I wanted to make it limited run instead of like yeah, these books will go on forever kind of
Right. Yeah.
Michael Conley Bosch situation. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, no. I'm just not someone who can stick that long with just one character.
Mhm.
So I need to be able to have that freedom to like start afresh and new after some time.
So I like that her current work in progress is set in, if you will, the same literary universe as the book we're talking about today. I think that's very smart because if there are characters that people like, they can always have crossover moments, and that could be fun. I always like those little Easter eggs when there are the same characters from different books, and I enjoy them, and then I read another book or a series, in this case a trilogy. So we're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll be talking about that actual crossover potential. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and my conversation with Brandi Bradley. Before the break, she was talking about her current work in progress, a series of 3 books set in this same universe that the standalone book, currently a standalone book, is set in. Let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Brandi. Smart plan because you can bring people back for if you're other books, other characters, but you can sneak people in if readers really like them.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's something that is really interesting, especially in the mystery writing sphere, is that once a reader falls in love with a character, they're like, especially a crime fighting character, it's just like, I will follow this character forever. We
Yeah.
will, we will go down the, and I understand that that is lucrative, but I also know that of the mystery series that I read, you can tell sometimes when the writer is like, I'm kind of over it, and I don't want to bring that energy ever.
Yeah,
So that's what keeps me from doing that.
makes sense. What draws you to writing crime fiction?
I went literary fiction like out the gate, like when I first started writing. Well, actually, I was doing romance. I'm not good at that. So I ended up going more of a literary route because I really like writing about humans and
Mm.
human drama and people who are dealing with stuff. And almost every story had some type of crime aspect to it. My first novel, Mothers and the Missing Mermaid, was about a young woman who finds out when she's in her 20s that she had been kidnapped when she was a baby and raised by the person who took her.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, and that to me was just like, it's family drama. And they're like, okay, but that's a crime. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And so when I finally started dissecting, what do I like to write? What do I like to read? What movies do I like to watch? They're almost all mysteries and noirs. And I'm like, okay, well, that should tell you something. This is what you like. So just stop holding back. Just do it. Just do it already.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of like surrendered to the thing that I love. And that's been so much fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they say, write what you know, write what you love. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to you. It will be interesting to your readers. Um, Southern noir, you've said the phrase. That's what the book is described as in its description. But what does that phrase mean for you? Because I ask this question a lot, and I think I get a different answer from every person. So I'm always curious. What does it mean for you?
Yeah, like I found it interesting too when I started researching noirs that many people have that association of Humphrey Bogart,
Mm,
the fedora,
yeah.
Chinatown, which again, things I love. But a noir is a mystery series, it's a mystery, it's crime, it is communities, it's the secret underbelly. It is the femme fatale, which does not have to be a woman.
Mm,
It is like all of these different elements, right? The elements of this genre. And I'm like, yeah, but Southern towns are perfect for that. I mean, as much as I love an LA noir, and that's what most people think about is out in LA, and I'm like, but we have all of that too. We have, corruption. We have behind the scenes wheelings and dealings. We have hubris, and we have many, many places to hide bodies. So it seemed ideal for a noir, but also thinking about like how many those elements reoccur in narratives. We have high school noirs, we have candy noirs, we have noirs everywhere, right? But with the Southern culture, so much of living in the South is kind of accepting this is what it's a cognitive dissonance almost, where it's like this is the face that we have for everyone else, and this is who we are behind the scenes. And so when we kind of poke at this mythology of the good Southern family, then it's way more interesting what they're trying to cover up. And I think people are fascinated by that, or else the Murdoch case in South Carolina wouldn't have captured everyone's attention. I think that when things happen in the South, people are like, what? How? Where? You know, and I'm just like, yeah, let's
yeah.
talk about it.
Right. Yeah. You were a journalist, so you've obviously been writing in various capacities for a while, but what made you decide it was time to maybe try writing for publication?
So it was interesting because it's been going on for a while, but when I was growing up, there was always this sense of writers aren't real, don't have real jobs.
Hmm.
And so I knew I wanted to be a writer at a very, very, very young age, but I was terrified that I would not be able to, excuse me, I was terrified I would not be able to support myself. So I went to school for journalism because I liked writing about people. And no better way to have a steady gig than to go in every week and have someone give you an assignment. What I didn't realize until I was graduated from my degree and started working at newspapers is I don't like being told what to do. So I was like, well, that's a problem. So when I gave up journalism, I kind of gave up writing for a long time because I felt kind of directionless, but the writing kept finding me. Like anytime I was processing any type of emotion, I was like, I have to write this down. And so I would like, and then ideas would come forth and I would push them away. And, opportunities would come out and push them away. Like I was really like processing that whole thing. And then I was dealing with a very traumatic experience in my life. I had a miscarriage. And part of recovering from that trauma was needing some time alone and time to think. And I got kind of fixated on a character who was having also very traumatic experience in a different way. And it was going to be an essay, and then it became a short story, and then it became a novel. It was my very first novel. It was not good. It was very short. And then after I wrote that, it was so healing. I was like, I think this is it. I think I'm ready. I think I'm ready just to accept that this is what I want to do and this is what I want to be. And, it's been a long road, and there's been a lot of choosing myself instead of like waiting to be discovered or just crossing my fingers and hoping that it's going to work out. So it's been a lot of me saying, this is what I'm doing now. Let's go do it kind of energy. And so it's a long way of saying that I've always wanted to write, but I haven't always accepted myself as a writer
Hmm.
until these last several years. And that's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Your name on your screen says Dr. Brandi Bradley. You didn't bring it up in your intro, but can you talk about the doctor title?
Sure. So part of my journey as a writer, because when I was wrote my first very short novel, I was in advertising and I was a new mom and I was just getting by. And I had a friend who I had linked up with, and she was also writing a novel and we were working together. And I just had this sense that I did not know enough about writing to be able to say I'm going to self-publish or I'm going to be an indie or even like I'm going to go snag an agent. Like I wasn't even aware of what I didn't know.
Mm.
And I have always loved school, and that's always kind of been in one of my little like, oh, wouldn't it be great to go back and get an English degree, or wouldn't it be great to go back and get a master's degree in this? And so part of that journey of, oh, I know that I want to be a writer. And to do that, I would feel more comfortable if I had more education. So I went and got an MFA. So when I was getting my MFA, and I can't say enough good things about my MFA program. I went to Spalding in Louisville, and it was a low resonance MFA, and I had amazing mentors, and I wrote amazing things, and I felt very confident coming out of there. And so when I graduated, even though an MFA is a terminal degree, I could have taught with it, I could have done anything with it. I wasn't done. Like there was just something about being able to take the time to only focus on writing and educating myself about writing and working with other writers that was so intoxicating and so much fun that I was like, I don't think I'm done. I don't think I'm done living this experience. And my husband had just gotten out of law school, and that was a journey to get him
Mhm.
through law school. And
Yeah.
I had just written off the idea of getting a PhD, and he said, look, you were with me through law school. If you want to get your PhD, I'm going to stick with you. Let's do it. We are very much let's hold hands and jump off the bridge together kind of people. So he was like, let's do it. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So I did. I went to Florida State University, and I got my PhD in literature, but my dissertation was a creative dissertation. So I got to write a novel as part of that. And that was very hard.
Yeah.
I have talked to many people about grad school PTSD, about that process of getting out and graduating, knowing that you're done done with your education, being so proud of that doctor in front of your name, but then you have to go and live in the real world. And it's like, what? This is very weird.
Right.
Um, but it was the best thing I could have done because it allowed me to, get hired at a university. I'm surrounded by resources. I get to talk about writing every day and I get to write. That's how that's why I'm Dr. Brandi Bradley. And it doesn't show up that much on my website, but at the same time, I'm so proud
Mm.
of that degree. I'm so proud that that is in front of my name. So yeah, it's on my Zoom and my phone, and I go to like the Apple store to get something repaired, and they're like, "You're a doctor." I'm like, "Yeah, but not that kind of doctor." But yes, I am. I am a doctor.
That's right. Yeah. Own
Yeah.
it. Okay, but if I had a PhD, I would absolutely use my title. Absolutely. So, yes, I completely support that. Do you see? Do you see that peeking dog? That's the old man. We don't usually see him. The baby's down here by my feet, but I'm sorry. That's just adorable. I don't usually see him peeking through the curtain like that. I digress. We're going to take our final break of this episode. When we come back, advice from Brandi for aspiring authors. You're tuned in to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back. Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my conversation with author Brandi Bradley. Yes, I'm smiling because he is still there. I do not know what is going on with him tonight. Actually, I do know he wants to go for his walk. It is past time for their walk because I've been waiting for it to cool down a little bit. So soon, buddy, I will take you for a walk. Before the break, Brandi was talking about getting her MFA and her PhD as part of her journey to publication. So let's go ahead and return to the conversation with Brandi. Yeah. From your experience then, because every path toward writing for publication is different. So what advice would you have for someone who wants to write?
I guess because it took me so long to believe in myself that I could do it, I think that that would be the first thing. Like you can do it. If I can do it. Yeah, but it's just that sense of like believing in yourself. If this is something you want, then there's nothing that should stand in your way from going and getting it. Just like, choose yourself and go for it. The other thing I would say, because it is the entertainment industry, we like to pretend like it's not, but it is. It's art, you're creating things, right? So what really got me out of my post-grad PTSD, I think, was figuring out a way to kind of embrace the process as opposed to the outcome, because it's very easy to get caught up in this. I'm going to write a book and it's going to be a bestseller, or I'm going to write a book that's going to get everyone's attention, or I'm going to write a book and everybody says is amazing. And that is very possibly true. But if that's all you're thinking about, then that middle section of your book where you've been working on a while and that fun is worn off and it's doesn't always seem like you're going to make it to the end, can become incredibly tedious unless you love the process of writing that book. And I mean like the little things associated with writing a book. Like I really have to like luxuriate in how much I love to feel my hands on the keyboard or that drag of the pen across the paper or organizing note cards that are going to be the different points of view. Like I have to really like set myself in a space where it's like, yes, you know what I'm doing today? I get to work on my outline or I get to write these scenes because that's what separates it from school.
Mm,
That's what separates writing from writing for other people from writing for yourself. Is that constant like choosing and accepting, like, yeah, this is fun for me.
hmm
Do this all day. I don't find it boring. I don't find it tedious. I'm not doing it for praise. I'm doing this because I would rather sit and type on my computer about my imaginary friends who I get into all of this trouble
Yeah.
than to go to a rock concert. Like this is just who I am, and it's
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. Thank you. When you take time to read, just for you, not for research or anything else, favorite authors and genres.
I am like many people. I'm obsessed with Megan Abbott and what she does. I think she's great, and I love a mystery noir. I'm like obsessed with most mysteries and noirs. But I also am feeling that summerween thing this summer where it's just like, ooh, that looks like a scary book. I'm gonna read that scary book. So I like a little bit more horror is coming into my reading space, and I also like gothic stories.
Hmm
Like I mean, and I think it kind of goes back to like I love the Brontes, so it's so cliche to love like Charlotte Bronte and Emily, especially Emily Bronte. I and so many like the Wuthering Heights is known as this romantic story. I'm like, no, y'all, it's a black comedy. It's hilarious. It's so overwrought and it's
So,
so like yes, it is. It is just it's everything, right? Like
yeah.
it's like the best and worst reality programming in a lot of way. Like it is just people just treating each other badly. And if you can't laugh at it, then it's just tragic. And for people to be like, it's so romantic. I'm like, no, it's not, but it's fun to watch because it's just drama. So yeah, so I like your things that are so I like gothics too. Yeah, I mean, there aren't a lot of things that I don't read, but I do know that so many of my friends are like, I love this fantasy story or I love this sci-fi story. I'm like, that's great for you. I love that you love that. I'm probably not going to, but that's okay. But that's fine because my best friend is like, recommend something for me to read that isn't going to keep me up all night. And I'm like, oh, well, that'll take a minute. Okay.
Yeah. Let me think about that.
Yeah, let me work on that one.
Then you said you're a mom, so what do you read? What do the kiddos read?
Well, my oldest son, he is obsessed with sci-fi, and I have had to put like a moratorium on like, guys, I can no longer talk about Star Wars today. Like that's it. Like mom's done. Like try again tomorrow. I might be more receptive. But he definitely likes that. My youngest son, he likes true stories. He loves nonfiction, and he loves any kind of like very gripping, close to death kind of like he reads those I Survived books, like I Survived a Bear Attack
Oh, wow.
kind of thing. And he's read that like three times. But now he actually likes mysteries. So I'm trying to lean him toward the Westing Game.
Mhm.
Or we watch the Clue movie a lot, so he loves that. Like he thinks Clue is the best movie in the world. We watch it on rainy days. It's super fun. Yeah.
That's good because many kids don't even know what it is. So,
Yeah, but even many adults don't know what it is. And
well,
I'm like,
yeah,
what do you mean? It was on Comedy Central every day that I was in college. And I'm like, yeah, Clue's on again. Let's watch it.
and the cast is amazing. Like you'll
Yeah.
recognize most of the cast if you watch it. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Also, like I was watching it recently and I was like, oh my God, Leslie Ann Warren looks amazing in that green dress. Like I can't get
yeah,
past it. Like I'm just like, I can't stop watching it.
yeah. So it's a classic for a reason.
Absolutely.
Like a
Yes.
cult classic, but still, it's a classic for a reason.
Yeah. And what's also kind of funny is that they made a documentary about how much people love Clue. And my kid found it and said, "We're watching this." And I'm like, "Okay, let's watch it."
Good for you, kid.
Yeah.
I love it. You mentioned your website, so remind people of your website and then any social media that you're active on.
Yes, it is Brandi with an I, Bradley with an Ley, .com. And I have a blog that I post every Tuesday, and it's something about writing, or it's something about some crime story that I am like following, or like something that I'm really invested in. But it's a lot of advice for writers because I'm a teacher in my other job. So it's just I get into teacher mode really easily. And if you're looking for me in social media spaces right now, I'm mostly on Instagram, and it's at the Brandi Bradley.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Brandi, is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure you mentioned or highlighted at this time?
I don't think so, but I will say, I know you said Tuesday, but we have a little bit of time left in June. On my website, anybody makes a purchase on my website, I'm donating $1 to a local group that is specifically a nonprofit for unhoused LGBTQ teens.
Mm-hmm.
And in Atlanta, where I live, it's predominant because of so many social stigmas still with LGBTQ teens, and how many of them find themselves unhoused because of how their parents react to things. And also, we have a huge human trafficking situation in Atlanta because it's such a hub, not to bring everybody down. But I just, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, I have kids, I worry about kids. So that's something that I'm doing right now for Pride. There's still time for that, even if people hear this on Tuesday. So that is something that I'm doing, and I want to encourage other people to do as well. But that's one way. If you wanted to help out, read a good book, donate to charity, help out.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the information and letting people know where they can find it. So thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time. I know that you are out with your family. I don't know if you're on vacation, if it's a combination trip, but you are doing stuff. And you talk to me as well. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you once again to Brandi for, well, not only joining me, but also talking about how you can still support Pride by going to her website and ordering the book. If you're interested in the book, you absolutely should do that. If you're a fan of crime mystery, of detective novels, of small town identity, same-sex couple, raising babies, random sperm donor who keeps trying to infiltrate the relationship. Like, there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot for you to enjoy and find your way, your entry point into this story. So if this sounds like something that you would be interested in, absolutely check it out. Absolutely go to Brandi's website and order it from there, and have your book dollars doing even more good in the world. I encourage you to do that in whatever way you already do, have been thinking about doing. There's just so many things that you can do in the world. So go out and do them. Go forth and conquer, please. But thank you so much to Brandi. And as I said, if you're a fan of this type of book, and if you're a fan of 3 very, very different women and points of view in a story, and you want to learn more about them, and is one of them a murderer? Probably not Lindy, because she's the detective, but hey, no spoilers. She could be. But one of them could be a murderer. They all have their own issues, and that dog is killing me. He's still there. He is like my little audience, and he is making me laugh. Meanwhile, the other dog is trying to chew off my thumb. I didn't need that thumb anyway. I'm right-handed. I don't need opposable thumbs on my dominant hand. At any rate, it is time to wrap up this episode. Thank you to Brandi. Thank you so much to you for joining me once again. We are back to short stories next week. I haven't had short stories in a while, so Bob Johnson will be joining me to talk about his short story collection, The Continental Divide. This was described to me when it was sent to me as dark fiction. I think my response was, this looks great. Yes, I'd love to have Bob on the podcast. Maybe next time can we have an email subject line with the words puppies and rainbows in it? But that's okay. Dark fiction. There's going to be a lot of interesting stories, I can already tell you. It's also described as chronicles, excuse me, I can't read my own handwriting, chronicles a side of the Midwest that no one talks about. So I'm guessing we're not talking tater tot casserole here. I apologize, tater tot hot dish. Dark fiction, not tater tot hot dish. Join me, please, for my conversation with Bob on the next episode of the podcast. In the meantime, as always, thank you so much for everything you do. If you are a fan of this podcast and you haven't done so already, please do like, follow, and subscribe. Helps the algorithm. Also, leaving a review really, really helps the algorithm and gets this podcast out to more readers such as yourself. A positive review can work wonders. Do that for your favorite authors as well, please. If you read a book that you love, quick review. You'll be amazed at how much that helps an author, and maybe then they'll be able to get more books out to you that you will also love. Also, if you're on social media, of course, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Love hearing from you. Please follow the podcast. Come find the podcast. Ask me all kinds of questions. Be nosy. Tell me what you're reading. Let me be nosy. Let me ask you not even probing questions. Just let me ask you nosy questions about what you're reading, your TBR, your book goals, whatever. Let's have a book conversation. I love it. All right. Thank you again for joining me. I hope you're having a great day. If you're celebrating the 4th of July this weekend in any way, shape, or form, please, please, please do be safe. That is my plea to you. If you have pets, make sure hopefully you've already talked to your vet if they are anxious or nervous. If you are having fireworks, please be aware of your neighbors. They may have scared pets. They themselves may be scared. They may have PTSD. It's important to be aware of our neighbors and kind and conscientious of our neighbors. So you be safe. Let's help our neighbors. Let's remember the animals. Let's celebrate the weekend. I hope you're having a great day. Whatever comes your way this weekend, I really hope that it gives you plenty of time to get yourself lost in maybe lots of good books, especially if it's a 3-day weekend. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to